Hello, I am your amazing anime protagonist. I'm kidding. I hated that. I am disgusted with myself. Anyway, so you're listening to One Sock Radio, right? Yeah, of course you are. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening to this. I'm dumb. Anyway, did you know that you can listen to One Sock Radio on other platforms other than YouTube? That's right. If you go to anchor.fm/one-sock, all lowercase, you can find basically every single streaming platform that One Sock Radio is on. And also, you can listen to the episodes right there on the site. It's really awesome and convenient. Anyway, enough about that. On to the episode. Dear Evan Hansen is a musical with book by Stephen Levinson, with music and lyrics by Benj Pasek and Justin Paul. Copyright is reserved by these names. The Dear Evan Hansen script is published by Theater Communications Group. Attention! The following episode has references of suicide. If you may be sensitive to this topic, please change the podcast now. Thank you, and enjoy. Before this episode begins, I would like to remind the audience that this is purely my interpretation of the show Dear Evan Hansen. It is completely possible that you can come to different conclusions or read different things between the lines. Again, this is a script analysis. Conclusions built on evidence from the script obtained through thorough investigation, and as art is incredibly subjective, different people can see different things from the evidence. Hello and welcome to One Sock Radio. I am your host, Cody Novotny.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It is time for a little chat. Sit back and relax. How about that? Make some breakfast and a cup of joe. Take some sips. And on we'll go. Enjoy!
Zoe Murphy, a sister, a daughter, a jazz band guitarist. As Laura Dreyfus describes her, a victim of circumstance. But there is a lot about this character that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, so allow me to go far too in detail in the script once again to find answers to questions that can easily be passed off as actors or director's choice. I want to open today's episode off like the rest of the Murphys, where I try and figure out what Zoe was like before Connor's death, and even attempt to find out what she was like before Connor's spiral. And again, like the rest of the Murphys, we have scene 1 to use as our reference, since it is our main source of information of this topic before the inciting incident, or the event that sparks the main conflict of the show. Like any brother-sister relationship, they are very clearly ornery with each other. I think you could even consider them being mean at some points, but just with the opening scene, it doesn't appear to be anything out of the ordinary. She complains about him, insults him, but it's clear that she's still willing to do stuff for him because she references leaving without him, implying that she takes him to school in Scene 1, Act 1. Considering the Murphys' established economic status, it's very likely that Zoe has a car and she isn't referencing walking with him to the bus stop. Later on in this scene, Zoe witnesses Connor shoving Evan and she goes to apologize to him. We have no other reference to find if Zoe always apologizes for her brother's actions, so let's look at this as the writer's decision. We know from working extensively on the show, or simply listening to the album once, that Zoe and Evan start dating in Act 2. This could be the first reference of that. Our first peer into Zoe's interest in Evan. Because not only does she apologize for Connor, she introduces herself, opening a door for them to talk more later. But perhaps Zoe is just being nice. In scene 6, Zoe is clearly skeptical of Evan at dinner. She also has a completely opposite view of Connor than Cynthia, which could be a play on the subject matter that the writers chose to portray. How there is one side that always sees the good of the recently deceased and one that always sees the bad, which raises a question. Is Zoe forcing herself to think this way? Something we will go into detail later. I bring this up because the minute Evan admits he went to the orchard with Connor, she is silenced. She barely speaks for the rest of the scene. The next time we see her, she's almost hostile with Evan. This could add to the question just asked, or it could add evidence of Zoe's interest, if you were to use the whole "you're meaner to your crush" excuse. She is also angry with the fact that people are suddenly being nice to her, wanting to be her friend. This is something she specifically brings up, and to be honest, if it took one of your siblings committing suicide for people to want to be your friend, I'd be pretty upset too. She also is annoyed with Cynthia constantly promoting Connor's good side with her, Zoe, advocating he had none. She believes Cynthia is pretending. The stage directions say that she half-heartedly flips through the emails, but she feels like she's being forced to mourn Connor, someone who she considers a villain, someone who used to, quote, punch through her door, screaming at the top of his lungs that he is going to kill her, end quote. Both quotes being from Scene 9, Act 1. I know a lot of people who see Zoe as traumatized by Connor. All of their evidence coming from this one scene. And if you were to use this scene exclusively, I could see that being a possible conclusion. But I believe this is a bit more complicated than what it is on the surface. She, unlike Larry, is willing to step into Connor's room. Scene 11 is the most background information we get about Cynthia and Larry. Not that it was really prompted. The information seems to spill out when it is relevant to the conversation. She is quick to insult her parents, which really isn't a surprise from someone at Zoe's age and point in life. But to look deeper into it, it's a deflection. Denouncing other people's mournings so she doesn't have to talk about her own. Even though she is constantly shredding on Connor, the fact that she is talked about in what she believes is his suicide note lingers on her more than she wants it to. She doesn't want to ask about it, which adds to the question I brought up earlier. Is she forcing herself to think negatively about Connor? This conversation with Evan opens a side about Connor that Zoe never saw. That he was reaching out but couldn't ever figure out how. Now, before we can talk about Zoe's reaction to the kiss that happens towards the end of this scene, we have to talk about the next scene first. Evan's speech. We get to see Zoe's reaction to seeing it online. Now, I'm not incredibly experienced in music analysis, but if I were to make an inference on the musical composition of this moment of You Will Be Found, Zoe is just reflecting on Evan's words for 3 musical lines. A building of an emotion deep inside her that leads to an explosion of the company's vocality of the Connor Project's message. You'll be found. Scene 12, Act 1. This feeling that is growing in Zoe, it's finding Connor. The assembly is about Connor, about what he taught Evan. Real or not, for the Murphys, for the internet, It's very real for them. Larry finally gets his moment to grieve through this. Zoe finally accepts her brother through this. She even kisses Evan, proving that she does have these feelings for him. So, what is up with their reaction to the kiss before? My interpretation? I think it is a simple case of bad timing. Zoe is hearing for the first time how her brother felt about her. Then suddenly getting kissed by the person telling her this? Feelings or not, it was just bad timing, a bad decision on Evan's part. But that is something we will look into more when we talk about Evan in the next episode. In Act 2, we are shown that Evan and Zoe start dating. But the song Only Us is a very important piece to understanding the last scene of the show. Through this piece, we learn that Zoe is in love with Evan. Not because of the Connor Project, not because of him being Connor's best friend, because he is himself. That is all she wants, him. And it's a beautiful statement to make to someone. And we know this is true because she is the only one of the Murphys that speaks to Evan at the end of the show. She is also the one who tells her parents about Evan's financial struggles with college, who suggests they bring Heidi over when they give Evan the money. She is clearly thinking about Evan, wanting him to succeed. But this firm foundation that her family has found begins to rock a little as Connor's note gets released online. We don't see her frustration with her parents shine out until Larry and Cynthia start fighting. Here we learn that Cynthia let Connor get away with a lot of stuff, and Larry was always punishing him, showing that she paid attention to what was unhealthy for Connor both in a positive and negative light. Possibly her frustration or annoyance with her parents are rooted in this. They're complete opposite ways of dealing with him. And when Evan reveals the truth, she is the first one to leave. A very important distinction made in the stage directions. Zoe is the first to leave. Why? That is the question. Evan admits that he saw all of his dreams there for the taking. And he thinks that everyone felt the same way, and perhaps they needed that stuff to be true. Zoe really hung on to the fact that Connor never really said all those things about her. But it's clear that she wanted to believe it. She loved her brother, maybe deep down, perhaps even very deep down. But she loved him and wanted things to go back to the way they used to be. At the orchard. She's crushed when she learns that it was all a lie, that her boyfriend chose to lie to her about something so big. That's why she is the first to go. She is also the first one to forgive Evan. The final moment of the show is between Evan and Zoe at the orchard. It's said that Evan reached out to Zoe, but she was the one who wanted them to meet up at the orchard. It's clear that they still have feelings for each other. Zoe made it abundantly clear that she liked Evan for him, not because of the story. But the lie was just too big for them to make amends quite yet. I just don't get the feeling that she hates Evan. More like she moderately tolerates and cares about him. Something really big is that she wanted to show Evan the orchard. Here is the moment we finally get to talk about the orchard and what it represents. Now, stick with me because this is going to get a little sappy. The orchard is a collection of fruit-bearing trees. The most common piece of symbolism for family. Connection. We are told that the orchard closed, and I would put money on it that it closed when Connor was in second grade, something that caused his attitude to spike like crazy, causing him to throw that printer, and it being the root of when his struggles began. But the orchard isn't just one tree. It's hundreds. Meaning that the orchard doesn't just represent the Murphys family, it represents everyone. From the huge family trees to the smallest single flower. This orchard finally comes back to life because of the Connor Project and its wide reach of its message. To people young and old, telling them that they matter. That all of this was because of Evan. That's what Zoe wants him to see, that all of this was possible because of him. People are starting to heal, reach out, grow. The stage directions specifically say that members of the company look around and see each other. It's such a powerful and caring message for Zoe to give Evan. She knows that Evan feels horrible about lying, but she wants him to know that despite what he did, he still made this happen. And this leaves Evan with hope. Now, time to talk about a question I posed earlier. Is Zoe forcing herself to think negatively about her brother, or is it genuine? She shows interest in hearing more about him when she and Evan talk about why Connor had all his hope pinned on her. But she is also, quote, instantly dismissive over the emails. Scene 9, Act 1. I don't believe this is genuine. But I also don't believe she is forcing herself. I think this is a defense. She would know that Connor is easily provoked, especially if the beginning of Connor's problems was in 2nd grade. So when she said that he threatened to kill her for no reason, she knew there was a reason. Strong or not, there was a reason. She is also reinforcing this idea that he is a villain, a monster, but she takes this full 180 when Evan talks to her, when his speech reaches her computer screen. This is probably a very, very subjective point of view, but this further proves the point that Zoe still loved Connor. Might not have been some strong family bond, but she still cared about him. And when it comes to the song Only Us, she's ready to move on. Listen to this line. I don't need you to fix what I'd rather forget. Scene 4, Act 2. She's done her hurting. She's done her healing. She's ready to move on and just focus on her and Evan. Zoe is at peace in Act 2. It's also not that she cared so little about her brother that allowed her to move on so quickly. It was because of Evan filling in the gaps that she needed. For people to move on from something like this, they either need something specific or they just need time. And Zoe, as I interpret, needed something, and Evan gave it to her. And that's most likely how she was able to make the mature decision to show Evan that he was more helpful than destructive. Funny enough, that leads us to the big question. How does Zoe fit into the underlying narrative of Dear Evan Hansen? She has a problem with remembering only the bad of Connor. She serves as Cynthia's opposite, to show that there are two types of naive parties. There are those who only see the good and refuse that there was any bad, and there are those who only see the bad and refuse to see any good. Both of which are found in all types of tragedy. But Zoe is also a symbol of maturity. This is something I wish I could see more of in society, and that isn't a jab. Zoe learns to look at both sides of what someone has done. Much like what Cynthia and Larry did when deciding what to do with the letter. But she chose to meet with Evan, to calm his grievances, to assure him that he did good. She didn't quietly forgive Evan and forget the whole situation. She openly showed him. And maybe I'm way off and she doesn't actually forgive Evan. In my opinion, this is the most confusing part of the show. But point is, whether she forgives him or not, she tells him something that he really needed to hear. That everyone needed the letter. That it saved her parents, and it saved the orchard. Everyone. That yes, what he did wasn't okay, but it still did an immeasurable amount of good. And that is a rickety bridge. Bad things done for good reasons. Dear Evan Hansen attempted to push the envelope for this kind of discussion. That people sometimes take advantage of a recent tragedy to push a concept, idea, or project. And sometimes the methods used aren't what people would consider good. That is the part people keep getting hung up on with this show. That Evan did something wrong and he didn't get punished. This is a dangerously narrow-minded way of thinking about the show. They are missing the other half. That Evan did do something bad, but it also caused a lot of good. And that pretty much outweighs what he did. That is why this conversation is so unstable. People only see the bad. They don't want to see the good. They don't even want to humor the idea of it possibly being good. If good is the intention, then good should also be the method. But Dear Evan Hansen isn't saying that it is okay to do bad for good. It wants to open the door for that discussion. That sometimes people choose bad or accidentally do bad, and something beautiful comes out of it. And in the aftermath, it is up to us to unbiasedly weigh the good and the bad. That is the word. That is the key word. Unbiasedly. To conclude, if the end justifies the means, and if that person deserves forgiveness. And on that note, we come to the end of yet another episode. Next episode, we wrap up our discussion with this show with the last and biggest character of the entire show. He is in the title, possesses terrible social anxiety, and founded the Connor Project. Evan Hansen. Before I leave, you are valid whether you like the show or not. Just remember, ask the wise, don't criticize. Have a good one.
Your company was just swell. I hope you enjoyed our little prank. Please have a good morning and a wonderful rest of your day.
One Sock Radio is self-produced, with readings, script, and music by me, Cody Novotny.